This is a Renegade Media Network podcast.
Let me tell you about the official coffee of the Counterflow podcast, and that is Lorenzotti Coffee over at lorenzotti.coffee. I drink Lorenzotti coffee every morning. It's that damn good. They are a great company run by very like-minded individuals. And what they do is they get their coffee beans imported directly from Italy. Then they package it up, vacuum seal it, of course, and it's ready to be shipped right to you. You got to go check out their storefront at lorenzotti.coffee. They've got these great looking coffee grinders. They've got beautiful tins that you can get the coffee shipped in and keep it there on your kitchen counter. That's kind of what I do, actually. They've got pre-ground, whole bean, 12 packs, 5 packs, 3 packs. Really, any amount you may need, you will find it on their site. It's LORENZOTTI.coffee. You are loyal listeners to this show. They are loyal supporters of this show, which means you get a discount. Type in promo code BUCK at checkout and you will get 10% off of your order. That's BUCK, B-U-C-K, at checkout for 10% off of your order when you go to lorenzotti.coffee. See you there? Drink it every morning while you listen to this show.
You are now listening to the Counterflow podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow podcast. Thank you for your continued support. I'm excited to bring you this one. I've got Vanessa, aka Gothix, on the show. She's been all the rage as of late on YouTube. If you are not familiar with her, I'm pretty damn sure that by the end of this interview, you will be a fan of hers. No doubt about it. One thing that's interesting, I think we discuss in this interview is once you start becoming red-pilled, we can call it, for lack of a better term at this moment, once you start seeing things for what they really are, you're going to lose some friends. And it's just the way it is. There's no mincing words here. You will lose some friends. That's just the way it is because you see things completely different than most people. And some of you, myself included, we've always been a little bit like that. Even before being red-pilled, you might have liked a subculture of music, or I don't know, you were a gamer or something where you never quite ran with the masses. If you become red-pilled, and I hope if you're listening to this, most of you are at this point, at least on a lot of topics that we discuss here on this show, you're going to lose some friends because they have a completely different worldview than you do. And communicating with them about certain topics is literally like speaking a completely different language. And I know all of you guys in your personal lives, you've seen this. You've heard me say that we are in post-persuasion America. Some people put it post-fact America. You could show people these charts and these numbers and these economic statistics, and they're just not going to get it. You've heard this analogy. It's like you go into a movie and you both come out and report opposite things of what you just saw. That's what it used to be like. Now, we're not even viewing the same movie many times. So I kind of say that just to help you guys understand that happens to all of us. We all go through that. And I think, like Vanessa discusses in this interview here, you start to realize you make better friends along the way after the dead weight drops off, as they say. So I'll quit wasting your time with inspirational speech, but I wanted you guys to think about that. And it is, again, it's a subject we discuss here in this interview. Vanessa, aka Gothix, has been a full-time content creator since 2018. She's most known for her interactive improv shows on twitch.tv, but recently started transitioning into social commentary. Previous collaborations include Astro Gaming, Voodoo Ranger, Manscaped, and Snapchat, to name a few. She's currently pursuing projects relating to podcasting, hosting, and commentary. And yes, she totally wrote that bio. Of course she did. but I just had to read it to you. She's here with us today on Counterflow. I'm excited to have her. Vanessa, welcome to Counterflow. Thank you for doing this. How are you?
I am fabulous. How are you?
I'm pretty damn good. I'm excited. And I'm still trying to remember how I discovered your show. I don't know if someone said, you've got to check this girl out, or I stumbled upon it on suggestions, maybe in YouTube, but I'm stoked that I found you because you're quite good. For those of my listeners who have not been lucky enough to discover your stuff yet, talk about what you do and how you started your career as the now on fire Gothix.
So my story is a little bit odd because I wasn't doing the videos that I've been doing on YouTube for very long. This has been something new within the last few months with the reemerging of Black Lives Matter last year. That was kind of around the time that I started posting videos. But prior to that, I am just a live streamer over on Twitch where I do video game streams. So it's totally opposite from what I do on YouTube.
Okay. I did not
Yeah.
realize that.
Oh yeah, I was very established on Twitch, and then I had my run-in with cancel culture, and I took some time off from that. And then when I started to see, people acting a little bit crazy in 2020, I said, okay, maybe I can shift gears for a little bit because it doesn't seem like many people are interested in gaming content right now.
Now, I did notice in your videos that chair that you're sitting in. Now that you say it in this context, that's one of those gamer chairs, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I thought so. Okay. I want to get into the weeds on this topic and get the nuance, the levels of nuance that there should be when you talk about race in America. But how would you describe, just to start off with broadly, how would you describe the race issue in America right now?
I believe the race issue in America is getting worse, but it's getting worse because I believe it to be manufactured. I believe it to be very artificial. I think that, for lack of a better term, I think Tom Sowell says it perfectly. Racism is on life support, but it's kept alive by politicians, the media, things like that. And I think that's where we are right now, where it appears that it's more racist, but I believe that it's more or less just blown out of proportion for intentional, I should say.
Mm-hmm. By people that I've heard you call race hustlers, among other things. And another thing I've seen you discuss that, I lived in Austin, Texas up until about 6 months ago. Now I'm in a small town about 30 miles away, but Austin, Texas has plenty of progressive allies, as they like to call themselves. And I've seen you do a video on allies, white allies, as they call themselves. Can I get your thoughts on that whole phenomenon?
I reject the concept of allyship because I have never had an ally, because I've always been viewed as, problematic for Black culture, or I'm the wrong type of Black, or I don't have Black people in my best interest because of the things that I talk about. And really, everything that I talk about is nothing different from what I believe a parent would tell a child if they're trying to offer some type of helpful criticism or advice. So I've never experienced allyship because I've just never been looked at as someone that qualifies for that type of relationship. And I think that as I said in my video, the biggest problem with allyship is if you're only hearing one side of the story, only this sector of Black people, and you're not listening to the other sector, then are you really an ally for Black people, or are you an ally for this person? I think it would make more sense if you said that rather than I'm an ally for Black people.
Yeah, I assume you find yourself pushed aside by the quote unquote allies because of, much like people like Thomas Sowell and Clarence Thomas and anyone who has maybe some opinions that don't fit into the little narrative, the little small window of allowable opinion that the allies would like you to have. Yes.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Was there a moment that you became maybe red pilled on this issue, or did you just, like you said, you were never one to have allies because you had different politics. What was your political journey to seeing this like you see it now?
Yeah, so I was born Democrat, as I like to say. And growing up, I always knew that I would butt heads a lot with a lot of Black people in my circle. And it was like philosophical differences. And I thought back then that that was just how it is. I would be called, you're acting white because I take my studying seriously, or you're acting white because of the music that you listen to. And I just thought that that was normal. That's just how it is. As a kid, I never really questioned it. And then as I got older, when I had my run-in with cancel culture, I was canceled by Black Twitter. And the reason that I was canceled is because I had the audacity to suggest that maybe we should not throw the race card around over a disagreement about a movie, because a movie was The Little Mermaid was going to get released, and they decided to take Ariel, a white character, and make her Black. And because some people have reservations about that, the solution now is, oh, you're racist. That's why you don't like it. Well, that's nonsense. You can't pass off that label to someone without proof. That's not a reason to call someone racist. So that kind of stuck with me, and that was about a year and a half ago. And then at the start of BLM, again, I had the audacity to ask another fairly easy question. Why are people stealing television sets if the problem is racial injustice? What does that have to do with racial injustice? And again, I got yelled at by Black Twitter. So I started to connect the dots and see that there's definitely some type of ideological differences between myself and Black leftists. And so after I had this conversation on Twitter, pretty much just people yelling at me because I had the audacity to ask this question, my boyfriend and I sat down and we started researching, because the narrative of BLM didn't make sense. And then seeing how a lot of people were parroting off this idea of, white supremacy and white oppression and all this stuff, we researched, and then we eventually watched the Uncle Tom documentary. And that was the turning point for both of us, where we literally looked at each other and said, what is going on? Because everything that was in that documentary was news to us. We had no idea. And we felt like we had been lied to a little bit, made to believe that this is how it is for Black America. So it was like this really gradual process. But now in retrospect, I look back and I see that there were instances where I can connect the dots and say, okay, this makes sense now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've heard you say you had a walk away moment, and those have started to become fairly ubiquitous, and you see more and more of them. What was yours? Was it what we're discussing right now, or was there another thing that kind of?
That was basically it. It was seeing, the Black Lives Matter, in all of its glory last year, and then seeing how it seemed like Biden was utilizing race as a tool to get into office, and I don't like that. Because I think that if you're doing that to me, that's a deflection. Like, don't look at the other stuff that I'm doing. Pay attention to this thing. I don't like that. And I also don't like the idea of convincing people that they need the help of another race in order to succeed. I think that just cultivates victimhood, and I couldn't consciously be on a side that always weaponizes identity politics.
Yes.
I was not down with that.
There's a chart that I've seen recently, and I was trying to find it to get the specifics on it, but basically it's the number of times the word racism was used, I believe, in the New York Times, and right about 2010 to 2011, it shot up dramatically. Well, that's when Occupy Wall Street was becoming big, and the Tea Party movement was becoming big, one of which wants to lessen the power of giant corporations, one of which wanted to lessen the power of big government. And it seemed to me like, what a convenient time to distract all of that stuff with the race issue. And then lo and behold, a few years later, big government, big corporations are all woke now and they're pushing that. And it almost feels like, I wonder if that's just a sleight of hand type of trick to where now, kind of shut up, placate the masses, quit worrying about what the big banks are doing, quit worrying about what government's doing. If we preach wokeness, you'll all love us. Does it seem like that a bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is one reason that I am so critical of this victimhood, belief system that a lot of Black people in America have, is that because it opens up the door for people to come in and say, I'm going to save you, which could mean someone malicious who wants to take advantage of you. And I think that with like the wokeness, it's very obvious that is what has been happening. And I think I've made that observation too when I look at, certain media outlets and how often they use race compared to the other ones. It's like, why? What is the motive of this? I'm sorry, what was the original question? I had a brain fart.
Well, that's okay, because you hit upon it earlier that it's almost like they want you to, hey, look over here, while other things could be going on. Like you said, maybe it is malicious events. And it's just interesting that the timing, as the Tea Party started to grow, who wanted government to shrink, and Occupy Wall Street, who wanted less power for these giant corporations, just within a few years, both of those giant organizations, big corporations, big government, said, hold on, everyone, look, we're woke now. And it just seemed like, hey, look over here, look away from what you were looking at.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you describe yourself politically right now?
I'm politically homeless.
That's common. That's
common. I have commitment issues now.
Yeah. I think that's like the common sense way to, to put all of your loyalties to a party at this point. I don't know. It seems a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, I kind of, I'm comfortable just voting for what's right for me, what's applicable to my life. I think that if I were to say I identify specifically with this party in particular, there's this weird expectation that I need to follow that party's philosophies to a T. Mm-hmm. And that seems very cultish to me. So I would prefer to just be like, I'm whatever.
Have you had any run-ins with actual high up people within the BLM organization?
Not yet. I've had high up. No, I've had a lot of run-ins with, allies and event organizers for like local chapters that, and this is just online. No one's ever approached me in public about this stuff, but I've gotten a lot of very abrasive interactions with people that help the movement itself. And it's weird. I keep calling it a movement, but it's like this organization.
Yeah. What I'd like to get your thoughts on the actual organization, because people do sometimes like to delineate, like, I support the idea, I support the movement, or no, I actually like the organization. What are your thoughts on the organization itself versus, say, the movement?
I find no difference. I find it all to be the same, even though there are different chapters and, the organization has its own mission statement, and which I find to be an issue in itself. But even the local chapters, if you actually look into them, a lot of them say things like, let's take down capitalism, let's get rid of the nuclear family, let's take, I believe there's one chapter that wants to get rid of Christianity or something like that. Like they seem to be all over the place. So when people say, oh, I don't support the organization, I only support the movement, well, how much do you know about the movement? Because it seems like a lot of the things that are, I don't think people are fully aware of what they're backing is a better way to say it.
What are they backing?
I believe they are backing a radical Marxist movement that has gotten very out of control. And I think that we are moving closer into segregation, all the things that I think most activists would want to fight against. I think they are effectively aiding by helping this Black Lives Matter movement. Just my observation of what I've seen. I have not seen anything positive come from any of these protests. Not a single thing.
What about, we can couch this in different terms, maybe the social justice movement
it's often kind of lumped in with BLM. Do you have specific thoughts on social justice?
Yeah. So with by the thanks of my YouTube viewers, they were kind enough to let me know that social justice actually isn't a good thing, because what that means is it's just some type of vigilante. It's this type of court of public opinion. So social justice seems to be where people become emboldened to take things into their own hands. And I've seen it abused with, for example, the Me Too movement. I know a few people that have been accused of things that they didn't do. And because we have, a lot of these keyboard activists and things like that, it turns out that a lot of the times these social justice movements end up being the very thing that they hate. So I think like the wokeness, the BLM, the SJW, I find a lot of similarities with all of that.
Let me tell you about our newest sponsor, domesticterroristclothing.com. Do you want to travel by plane but still want to show your disdain for their policies? Do you live in a terrible place where masks are required everywhere, but maybe you want to make your feelings known without even saying a word? Do you want to comply while still resisting? Well, then the Obey mask is for you. These masks are 100% polyester exterior and 100% cotton interior. They are black with the word Obey in white across the front. They are not medical grade and not meant for medical use, much like all of the masks, right? They may not stop any diseases, much like all of the masks, but will certainly make all of the Karens lose their minds. If you're in one of these cities and you just got to go into these stores and they're going to make you do that, put on a mask that just pisses them off. And my guys over at domesticterroristclothing.com could hook you up with this. The folks at domesticterroristclothing.com, like many in the liberty movement, are concerned that about half the country are being labeled as domestic terrorists. This label is being applied to hard-working average Joes and Janes. Their goal there is to reappropriate these words, domestic terrorist, and normalize them to remove the negative connotation. They want to see their brand on people from all walks of life. So when the blue-checked, blue-pilled lefties label you a domestic terrorist, you can smile and say, yes, I am, knowing there are millions just like you. Find the fellas at domesticterroristclothing.com on Facebook, Twitter, Gab, and Minds. Get your items at domesticterroristclothing.com. Use promo code BUCK for a 10% discount on all items. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, this is a segment that it's going to be somewhat therapeutic for me. Within the SJW movement, there's obviously, like we've said, a lot of white leftists, and I know many of them from my circles in Austin, we will say, maybe the music circles. I want to read some of the stuff I actually see from people I know written online, and just a few points, and I want to get your thoughts on each one.
Okay, this is fun.
Yeah, this is therapy for me, because rather than just go, God, I can't believe this, now my audience gets to hear it, you get to react to it. This country was completely built on the backs of Black and brown people, and they're still getting fucked. Anyone who is white, American, and male is way better off because of centuries of systemic racism.
No. So my thought with that, first of all, and I have this discussion with my boyfriend a lot. We notice this very anti-male, anti-white male specifically narrative that's being tossed around. And I don't believe systemic racism is the cause of most problems for Black people in America. If there is, and I would love to have a conversation with someone that has been directly affected by systemic racism, because so far I haven't been able to find anybody. I ask this question all the time. I said, can anyone personally tell me how have they been affected by systemic racism? It's always some other person. Mm-hmm. And then I think that's part of the problem. Is that there's no point of reference to say, okay, you've actually experienced this, or are you just parroting this because someone told you this? Mm-hmm. I think that Black America before 2020 was in a much better spot. And honestly, I never even heard the term systemic racism until 2020, if I'm being very honest.
Yeah, but hey, if it's systemic, how do you not know a bunch of people that have been affected by it? It's interesting, huh?
Exactly.
All right, here's another one, and this one's fascinating because it's between a gentleman who is half Black and half Native American, conservative person, and a white leftist. There was an online argument. I believe the gentleman who's Black and Native American insulted Joe Biden, and that's how this started. The white leftist says, "You're not a man of color. Please tell me about all of the times you've been discriminated against, pulled over for driving while Indian/Black, etc. You pass as white," because he's lighter skinned. "You pass as white and you don't have any of the experience of a Black or Indian person. You're either a white liar or a sellout to your race. Either way, you're a punk and need to stop talking."
Okay. Wow. So, one realization that I've had with this whole talk about racism and, it's that the goalpost always moves for who is oppressed. And because I am not the darkest Black person, if I were to say I don't suffer from systemic racism, I don't believe in white privilege, it's because, oh, well, you're light skinned. This is a common response that I will get from allies or other Black people, is I'm too light skinned, so that's why I don't face discrimination. And then as far as just the assumption that someone hadn't had experiences because of their skin color, like that is an assumption that's not something rooted in truth, and I find that to be a little bit bigoted, because the idea of making an assumption about someone because of their skin color, you're doing that by that statement. You're saying that, oh, because you're lighter, you've never experienced this.
And that if you can't possibly be part Black because you've never experienced this, only real Black people or real Native Americans, I suppose, have had the fear of being stopped for driving while Black or Indian. Strange assumption.
Yeah. And then my question would be, how do you define a real Black person? What is a true Black person to you? I had a friend who is no longer a friend, but before we parted ways, he said, well, you're not the typical Black person, so you wouldn't understand Black Lives Matter. I said, what does that mean exactly? Could you explain it to me? Didn't get an answer.
Only certain Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
All right, last one, and this is in regards to Biden's inaugural speech. We had a president say the words white supremacy today in an inaugural speech for the first time in history. Very late, but very welcome. I thought that this was one of the most significant moments of the day. Well done, Mr. President.
I don't even know if I have a response to that one. This trend of talking about white supremacy is a little bit, it's nauseating.
Yeah.
Because I have never met a white supremacist. And if I have, I don't know. I have no idea. Meanwhile, I can walk outside my door, find an ally, and they'll be racist to me. I'll find other people that look just like me, and they'll be racist to me. So all this talk about white supremacy is the cause of all the problems for Black people in America. I think it's I don't believe it. I don't see it, and I don't think that making this giant, I hate using this term because I think like Candace Owens says it, but she refers to it as like a white boogeyman, and that's what I view it as. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a weird speech. I don't know why he did that. All
right. Why do you, this is back to you. We're away from the crazy state I read online. Why do you do what you do? What inspires you? And I mean, because putting out this content, I know is it takes time and money and effort. Why do you do this?
I want to help. Because I'm not an activist, and I'm not a confrontational person at all. But it's one of those situations where if you see someone that is hurting themselves and they don't know any better, it's like I have empathy for that person. Like I want to help you. And I think there are a lot of people that are believing this sort of victimhood oppression narrative because it's comfortable. It's comfortable to blame all your problems on someone else. And you know, researching from what I've seen between like Sowell or Manning Johnson or Booker T. Washington, this idea of victimhood has been a thing in Black culture for years, and it never gets talked about. And I think that that's a very backwards way of thinking, because if I can live a pretty comfortable life, and I know other people that look like me can live a pretty comfortable life, if anything, I think that myself and other individuals should be, you know, I don't know, I don't want to sound cliche, but it should be inspiration for others to say, okay, they can do it, I can do it too. Instead of believing like, woe is me all the time. And I don't know, I think also with the rhetoric that I'm seeing about this whole, there's a lot of anti-white rhetoric going on right now with the white supremacy and the anti-racism and the critical race theory, which I believe to be all racist. If that keeps going, I think that we are going to reverse any progress we've made in this country as far as race relations. I've already started to see it happen. I've gotten lots of comments from people that aren't talking with their families, like they're fighting with their spouses. They don't have any, like their friends stop talking to them, all because they either voted for Trump or rather than saying voting for Trump, they're just not leftist or they're not Biden supporters.
Right.
And I don't know, I'm very concerned, honestly. So that's why I do it, because at this point, what do I have to lose?
Yeah, maybe some more friends. I've been going through this myself, where there's a certain mentality from the left, and as this particular show got bigger, I would start to get little pokes from people that I've known through the music world that were leftist, of course, and demanding that I answer this one question, or hey, why'd you have this one position? That sounds racist, or you know, that's always the term thrown out there. No matter what, if you talk about eliminating welfare, you'll get that even. And so it is interesting that there's these people that demand some kind of like I owe them an answer, like they actually would want to hear my opinion, my answer, because then they can just shut me down. You know, I knew you were going to say that. That's what I always thought about you, kind of thing. Have you lost some friends in this type of environment?
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. Because like I said, before I was doing YouTube, I was over on Twitch. I had a pretty decent following over there. And a lot of the people that I considered friends were other content creators on that platform that I got to know very well. I went to conventions with them. I've invited some of them over my house. You know, like we were actually friends. And the second I voted for Trump, it was like, oh, you support Nazis, you support white supremacists, I can't be friends with you anymore. And with every video that I would put out, more friends would just stop talking to me. Oh, she's being problematic. She's being divisive. And the way that I look at it, everything that I'm saying is rooted in research or it's an observation. So if I am critiquing certain behaviors, like for example, if I'm saying like there's definitely some type of, what's the word? There's a lot of hostility that I've been getting from the left. That's not divisive. That's just my observation. And I think that if we get to this place where now we can't even point out what is going on, we have to not acknowledge reality, how would we fix it? So yeah, it's really bothersome to see so many relationships broken up, and I've had a few, you know, I've cried a lot. I've cried a lot all last year. My boyfriend has too, because we've all lost friends, and it's exhausting. And if this is a common thing with everyone losing chunks of friends and even getting fired from work and things like that, well, at this point, then I can only keep going forward. I can't go back. I already lost my friends. What's the point?
Was there any part of that, I don't know if this is the right term or not, that almost feels liberating, when maybe if they show their true selves and then you cut them out, did you really want them anymore in your life? at that point? Is there any part of this, I guess, that feels liberating?
Yeah, I think that it was weird because at first when I started to lose some friends, I was really upset about it, and I said, "Well, I really want my friends back." But then I started to notice that they wouldn't let it go, and they would keep going on social media and talking about me and dragging me down and calling me all kinds of names. And like I said, I'm not a combative person, so I would just sit there not doing anything. I would just I wouldn't engage, but they would just keep like egging me on and on and on. And some of them have said some pretty heinous stuff to the point that even if they came around and said, you know what, Gothix or Vanessa, I researched into what you said, it had some truth. I'm sorry. Let's be friends. I don't think I could.
Yeah.
A lot of them have crossed the line, and I think that even though it was painful to lose all of those people in my circle, it's been able to connect me with a lot of strong-minded individuals, and I'm like, this is a good trade-off. I think I'm okay with this.
Yes, that's good to hear.
Let's talk about one of my favorite sponsors of this show, and that is Paloma Verde over at palomaverdestore.com. It's a wonderful small business run by a great couple out of San Antonio, Texas. That would be Carlos and Vanessa. What will you find at palomaverdestore.com? All things CBD, everything you need in that regard. This is your one-stop shop. They've got CBD gummies, CBD pet products, CBD soft gels, tinctures, topicals, and you've heard me in the past rave about the sports cream. I'm going to rave about it again because it works very, very well. I cannot recommend it enough. You know who else recommends their products? My dog, Lux. He's about 10 years old now. He was not getting around as quickly as he used to until I started putting some of it on his food every morning. How cool is that? So I've got a promo code for you guys because you're loyal listeners of this show and they are loyal supporters. It is BUCK, B-U-C-K, at checkout. That will get you 25% off of any purchase over $75. And check this out. You sign up for their emails and then you'll get an extra 10% off, which will then give you a total of 35% off of your order. How cool is that? Again, that is promo code BUCK, B-U-C-K, at checkout, palomaverdestore.com. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
You said you were born Democrat. Are your parents political?
My stepdad is more than my mom, I think. I think my mom is a little, my mom voted for Biden. And luckily we have a pretty good relationship where, I know a lot of families don't have the same outcome, and a lot of them are fighting over this, but she is Democrat, but I believe she has a lot of her influence comes from identity politics. So she makes her decisions on identity politics more so than policy, I believe. My stepdad is more of a policy, and I believe he said he voted for Trump the first term. So, but otherwise, we don't really talk about politics. This is all very new for us.
What do they think of your video clips that you make?
So they haven't seen them.
Oh.
Yeah, I told my mom years ago when I started getting into Twitch, I told her, I said, hey, I'm gonna make video game content for a living and make some money, and she was like, okay, that's weird. But I never told her I transitioned over to YouTube. And actually I did a few weeks ago, I kind of briefly told her like, oh, I'm making YouTube content, but she didn't ask me to elaborate. I don't think she's seen any of the videos, so.
Well, that's interesting. I hope she doesn't listen to this show. What do you think her thoughts would be? Do you plan to kind of unveil it at some point?
Well, when I told her that I was making new content, I gave her a summary. I said, oh, because of the social climate right now, everyone's acting crazy. I'm just kind of being a voice of reason. She did say, well, that's good. I'm happy for you, because she was concerned that I just wasn't making any money. Because for a while, I wasn't making anything on Twitch because I was canceled. I was out of commission for a few months. So she's happy that I am making a living again. But she also said, even though we don't agree on a lot of things, I'm happy that you're being able to take care of yourself. So I don't think that she would have a negative reaction to the stuff that I make. I think her concern would be more so my safety. Because the things I say, I can see how it would annoy a lot of people. So I believe that she'd be more concerned with that.
How did the cancellation come about then? Let me get into that with you. From Twitch, that was strictly the gamer stuff at that point.
Yeah, strictly the gamer stuff.
And how did that come about?
So that was literally, like I mentioned earlier, with the Little Mermaid movie. Because we have, you know how I said there's Black Twitter, there's like different sectors of Twitter of just groups, right?
Sure. Yep.
And when Little Mermaid announced that they were gonna turn Ariel black, I was really disgusted going on my timeline and seeing all these woke people accuse each other as being racist. Oh, you don't like that Ariel's black now? You're racist. Like, no, that lacks critical thinking. That's very lazy for you to just use that as a term, and that's a very dangerous term. So, you know, that's pretty much how it started. It was, oh, you're anti-black because I don't want Ariel to be black, or, you know, you hate your own kind, or you don't want the best for us. I said, no, I want the best for black people. This is why you shouldn't take sloppy seconds of a pre-existing character. Ask for a new character. And I don't think that, in my opinion, it was controversial at all. But it snowballed into this, I hate black women. I just want to be like the white people. And, you know, and this was years ago, and I'm still being called all of these things over on Twitch, which is why I really don't stream as much as I do over there. But I think every now and then I try to keep a presence there just for the sake of the Twitch platform not being dominated by one belief system, because it's very leftist. It's very progressive over there.
Okay. The gamer community in general, or that specific outlet for it?
I think in general, but not by choice. So for example, when BLM was happening, I saw on Twitter so many content creators from Twitch that were getting attacked because they were going to vote for Trump, or because they didn't support BLM. It was like this mob of, and it happened to me too. Someone found the video that I uploaded on my channel of why I voted for Trump, and someone from Twitch made a thread of like, let's go get this girl. I'm like, what did I do? All I did was vote. So it's very one-sided, and I think it's that way to the point where people that are not leftists will be quiet. They won't talk about politics. They won't mention who they vote for because they're afraid. Because if they're public with it, they're going to get attacked.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it's kind of a brilliant tactic from the left to, it looks to me, you know, like it makes them appear that they're the only voice out there, because if maybe you've got a different opinion, they silence you. It's insane. And I wouldn't want to be that type of person, but at the same time, it sure works for them at this point. Yeah. I think there's going to be a pendulum swing back against them at some point. Do you see the growing, I don't want to just generalize it to the black community within the Democratic Party, but the walk away movement, does that seem to be growing from your standpoint at all?
Oh yeah. I know a lot of people, a lot of black people too, that have walked away from the Democratic Party. And again, not a lot of them will be public with it, because nobody wants to get abused. They saw what happened to me. They're not going to do it themselves. But yeah, I have definitely seen an uptick in it, and it's great. And it was, and I think I don't know if you heard this, but the walk away group on Facebook was deleted. You know, towards the end of last year, and it had almost, I think, like 500,000 followers in that group, and Facebook deleted it. And all it was just testimonials of people saying, oh, I walked away, here's my story. Very peaceful stuff, no white supremacy nonsense that people like to talk about. And they deleted that, and to me, that's very concerning. To me, that is Facebook trying to say, hey, no, people aren't leaving. People love it over here. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, that narrative they've got, it's not real, is it? And silence, you're gone. See, look, they're gone. You know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I assume you hear a lot of common phrases directed at you that are pejoratives. You've kind of hinted at that throughout this interview. Is there the same types of people that you get a lot of hate from, or does it span across the ideological spectrum?
I think for the most part, it's the same type of people. They either, and this is a really weird indicator, and it's become a joke sometimes. But do you ever come across a Twitter profile that has pronouns in bios? Like
Yes.
they, okay,
All of the people that are freaking out about anything not in their ideological spectrum, their little world, they always have pronouns in the bio.
yes. It's become a stereotype, but it's a very accurate stereotype because the majority of people that have been very combative with me out of nowhere, like I say, I mind my business on the corner of the internet. I just want to be able to utilize my free speech just as much as anyone else. But it's always without fail a bio with a bunch of pronouns or a bunch of hashtags of them virtue signaling they're doing something. So like hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag whatever or organization I'm supporting today. And I don't know if it's this idea that these types of people want everyone to know that they support something. Like, look at me, I'm supporting something. Look, I'm a part of this. But it's becoming so much of a trend that's like instantly, whenever I see someone yelling at me, I'm like, let me check your bio. Okay, that explains it. It's bizarre. And I've gotten a bunch of crazy insults, but without fail, I think that is the common. Not always. Some days I won't get those, but I think 80% of the time, the people that are combative with me have very large bios.
Yeah, so now I believe the vice president of the United States might have some pronouns in her bios. I do believe I've seen that as well.
No, you're kidding.
No, I think, yeah, if you didn't know that, go check out Kamala Harris's Twitter at some point, and I'm 99% sure I had seen it at some point. She had pronouns in her bio.
Wow.
You know, she's got to fit the mold. You know, got to be woke.
Oh.
I want to do something. So you're a very powerful voice, and I find you to be inspirational. I'd like to give you the floor here to talk to anyone out there listening who a lot of people feel like it's best if I just don't speak up about what I'm thinking or my political views. They're afraid of being fired, canceled, called names, the stuff that you've been through yourself. Speak your mind here on that and you can take it in whatever direction you'd like.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you so much. Never got this opportunity. So if you are someone that is, afraid to speak your mind, afraid to lose your job, afraid to lose your friends. First of all, if you're afraid to lose your friends for speaking your mind, those aren't your friends. Because I say that a friendship should have more to it than just who did you vote for? That was the breaking point for a lot of the friendships that I had. Oh, you voted for this guy? We don't want to be friends with you. That's not a friendship. So I think that people need to, first of all, acknowledge the differences between an acquaintance and an actual friend. As far as losing your job, I've gotten laid off many times over the years. What do? You pick yourself up, you get a new job. You just life keeps going. And the reason that I'm saying that is because I've been seeing the rise in censorship, and it's very clear that censorship is directed towards people who have takes or opinions or information that contradicts whatever mainstream narrative is happening right now. So I, for example, would be more likely to get censored because I do not believe that systemic racism is plaguing this country. And I think a lot of people might be too. I get this impression that a lot of people don't want to believe that things are the way that they are right now. I think a lot of people think we're in some type of simulation, like this is crazy. We're in a movie right now. This could never happen in 2021. But I sense something very insidious that is happening, and it's only going to get worse. And I think that the powers that be, whoever they are banking on the fact that most people won't ask questions. Most people will just shut up. So I think that there's strength in numbers, and while I appreciate everyone's, cheering me on from the sidelines, we really need you. Like as Americans, we really need you. I think that's all I got to say.
Well put. Are you optimistic in general?
Yes. So some days I get really down. The in those days usually is like when I come across a Twitter profile with someone that's promoting the opposite rhetoric to me, like the very hateful, divisive rhetoric, and I see their following, and I'm like, you have 1 million followers. I can't compete with that. And it's those days that I'm like, I really wish more people would speak up because these people have this gigantic platform. How do you compete? But otherwise, I try to stay the course and just be positive and say, we're going to get through this. We're going to turn this around. That pendulum is already starting to swing. I see it.
Do you see it?
I see it.
I think so as well. Before we get you out of here, you need to plug anything and everything you want right here. Social media presence, anything.
Okay, cool. So you can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Gothix TV, Gothix with an X. And then I'm also on Instagram at Gothix TV. And you can find me at gothix.tv if you want to sign up to my mailing list. But pretty much that's where I hang out right now on the internet.
Excellent. I will link to all of that in the show notes page for this episode. Gothix, Vanessa, thank you so much for being here on Counterflow.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Miss Vanessa, aka Gothix. Go check out her stuff at gothix.tv. As always, I will link to everything in the show notes page for this episode. At the beginning, we talked about losing some of the deadweight friends and making new ones. I'll tell you a place you can make some new ones in our Telegram group. Get the Telegram app, search for the Counterflow with Buck Johnson podcast room, and we have fun in there, chatting and sharing articles and whatnot. I'm going to keep promoting the YouTube page because now I've got my man Justin pumping out these videos on YouTube for our page, and all of these interviews that we do are on there. It's got the video of it as well if you actually want to see me for whatever crazy reason, or more likely you want to see my guest. Find us on YouTube, Counterflow with Buck Johnson. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel, and meet up with me in Alabama. I've got to say that I'm quite stoked. It may be sold out, but go to the Mises Institute page and find their event section at Mises.org. Find their event section. We are doing something in Birmingham, Alabama. I believe it's August 9th. Let me look at my calendar as I say that, not having it prepped, right? April 10th, we will be in Birmingham, Alabama. The Mises Institute is putting on a function, and President Jeff Deist of the Mises Institute will be talking there. And at the end of the discussion, Tho Bishop and myself, and maybe some others, if so, I've not heard yet, but Tho Bishop and myself will be on a panel discussing political strategy in a post-Trump America. That is going to be fun. I hope to see some of you guys there. And that is all I have for you now. Have an excellent week.
You get split in fucking half, like on the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been the Counterflow Podcast, a part of the Renegade Media Network.